Now let's talk about the GPU's memory philosophy. So we're going to have the same program here that we had for the CPU, but the GPU doesn't have all this fancy hardware to analyze instructions and figure out what we can do out of order. So it's just going to look at the next instruction and execute it. And it's got multiple functional units, but since it can't analyze instructions to see what it can do in parallel, it can't really run a lot of them in parallel. So we're going to go ahead and execute our program in a really simple way. We get our first instructions, now we get our load. Couldn't do any of these in parallel because we couldn't analyze the instructions. Now when we get this load, we know it's going to take a long time to get to memory. But we don't have a cache. So it's going to take a long time to get to memory, or if we do have a cache on new machines, it's really small. So caches on high-end GPUs today have about 3 bytes of cache for each thread. That's not much. So if it's going to take us this long to get to memory and we don't have a cache, what do we do? Well, the simplest thing here is we just give up. We say, hey, this is going to take so long to get our data back that there's no point in trying to wait for this program. That's fine. We go ahead and put that program over to the side, and we go ahead and grab another program. Remember, in the GPU world, if we're doing graphics, we have millions of these threads, these parallel threads to execute at once, because we've got one thread for every pixel. So as long as we've got millions of other things to do, let's go ahead and do something else. So we give up on this thing, put it over on the side to wait, go ahead and get another program, start on that next program. When that next program gets to this load, well, what do we do here? We give up on it too, and we just put it over on the side. And we keep doing this. So eventually we've got a whole bunch of programs here that are just sitting waiting for memory, and our first load comes back. Now when our first load comes back, we go ahead and take that first program, put it back onto the processor, go ahead and send in the data, and now we can complete that program. So the GPU memory philosophy is really different. We have thousands of hardware threads, lots and lots of these. In a CPU, have a few hardware threads. Here we've got thousands of them. We've got very fast context switching. When one of them stalls, we can instantly switch to another one. Doesn't cost us a lot. We don't have to go to the operating system. And we have hardware thread scheduling. That means the hardware can say, hey, this thread is waiting on memory. I'll go ahead and start another thread. We don't have to get the operating system involved to make those scheduling decisions. So as a result, as long as there's enough work in other threads to cover the latency, you get high throughput. So notice we're not saying anything about latency. Each one of these threads can take a really long time because it has to wait 100 cycles for the memory. But we're going to do a lot of them at once because we just switch to another thread while we're waiting. So there are a few notes here. So GPUs have caches for textures, they've always had that, and newer GPUs have a small amount of caching for data, but it's a very small amount compared to the number of threads they have. So you may have 1.5 megabytes of shared cache for 1,500 threads. So that's a very small amount of cache per thread. And in order to get the best access, the best throughput, you need good access patterns. So it's not just enough to do this, you also have to make it work well with the DRAM. So the bottom line for GPUs is as long as there's enough work in other threads to cover the latency, you get high throughput. We just find other work to do while we're waiting to access the memory. And this works great for graphics and works very well for some other sorts of programs. But there are a lot of programs for which this just really doesn't work well.